Extreme mental fortitude and the will to suffer, the forge of the unbreakable self, the most foundational, non-negotiable principle across the entire collection, from David Goggins's Can't Hurt Me to the brutal accounts of BUD or S basic underwater demolition or SEAL training. In the warrior elite is the absolute supremacy of mind over matter, specifically codified as extreme mental fortitude and the will to suffer. This is the first principle because it addresses the single greatest hurdle to elite performance, the self-imposed psychological limit. The core tenet is that the average person, and even the exceptional civilian, operates at a drastically reduced fraction of their true physical and mental capacity. Goggins explicitly introduces the 40% rule, arguing that when your mind tells you that you are done or are experiencing peak suffering, you are in reality only 40% utilized. The remaining 60% of potential is locked behind a psychological barrier, a protective mechanism designed to keep you safe and comfortable, which is precisely the enemy of growth and elite performance. The path to the SEAL trident, or any form of high achievement, is therefore not primarily a test of physical strength or intellectual acuity, but a deliberate, continuous destruction of this psychological comfort zone. This principle mandates the voluntary acceptance and embrace of suffering. What Brent Gleason calls embrace the suffering is reframed not as a deterrent or a sign of failure, but as a diagnostic tool and a catalyst for transformation. When pain registers, the warrior or high performer is taught to look inward, not outward. The pain points to the exact threshold that must be transcended to achieve the next level of mental toughness. For the SEAL trainee, this is the freezing cold of the Pacific, the sleep deprivation of Hell Week, or the crushing weight of the log carry. For the entrepreneur, this is the crushing anxiety of a failed product launch, the isolation of relentless work, or the pain of having to pivot your brand like your spiritual bracelet store. ElementalSoul might need to in a challenging market. The suffering provides the friction necessary to forge a new, stronger identity. A critical mechanism for executing this principle is the development of the cookie jar. Goggins. The cookie jar is a mental inventory of all past achievements, especially those earned through extraordinary suffering and against overwhelming odds. When the current challenge seems insurmountable and the 40% rule kicks in, the warrior opens the cookie jar, pulling out specific memories of past self-transcendence. These memories serve as irrefutable evidence that the present pain is temporary, manageable, and that the individual is capable of far more than their current physical sensations suggest. This mechanism effectively reprograms the subconscious to recognize that the feeling of being done is a lie. Furthermore, the collection emphasizes the necessity of objective self-assessment. Goggins's accountability mirror. To develop true fortitude, one must first confront their weaknesses, failures, and excuses with brutal, non-judgmental honesty. This isn't about self-flagellation. It's a cold, hard review of reality. You must identify the specific weaknesses that your mind uses to justify quitting. This unsparing self-reflection where you write down your insecurities, your missed goals, and the reasons why you haven't yet become the person you need to be is the prerequisite for creating a targeted action plan to build mental armor. It is the beginning of UnbeatableMind. Mark Divine. The result of this sustained willingness to suffer is resilience and unflappability. The SEAL is trained to operate at peak cognitive function when everyone else is failing in the face of enemy fire, catastrophic equipment failure, or debilitating exhaustion. The goal is to reach a state where adversity is the expected norm, and therefore the nervous system no longer reacts to stress with panic but with calm, focused problem solving. This is the stealing fire concept applied to combat, a trained ability to enter a flow state under extreme pressure. They have practiced in the worst conditions the suck, so that when the real mission stress hits, they are psychologically familiar with it, effectively neutralizing its power. The willingness to suffer in training is the ultimate insurance policy against panic and failure in combat or in life. This foundational principle is the engine that drives all subsequent leadership and disciplinary frameworks. Word count 885. 2. Radical accountability and extreme ownership, the foundation of empowerment and freedom. The second foundational principle that unites this body of work, particularly the highly influential Extreme Ownership by Jocko, Willink, and LeifBabin, is radical accountability and extreme ownership. This is not merely about accepting responsibility. It is a total worldview where the individual, the leader, the warrior, the entrepreneur claims absolute and holistic responsibility for everything that impacts the mission, the team, and their results without exception, qualification, or excuse. The core of this principle is a shift in locus of control. The ordinary perspective seeks external factors, bad luck, incompetent subordinates, poor resources, unfair circumstances to explain failure. The principle of extreme ownership EO demands the absolute inverse. If the mission fails, the leader's first and only question is, what could I have done better? This applies even to factors seemingly outside of direct control, such as a subordinate's incompetence, the leader failed to train or vet them, or whether the leader failed to account for a contingency, or ambiguous orders, the leader failed to ask for clarification. This mindset is not a self-punishment mechanism. It is the ultimate source of personal power and freedom. By accepting 100% of the responsibility, the individual simultaneously claims 100% of the authority and power to enact change. If an outcome is their fault, they can fix it. If it is someone else's fault, they are a victim, powerless to change their circumstances. This is the intellectual core of the entire SEAL and high-performance philosophy. Freedom is not the absence of constraints, but the power derived from controlling one's response to them, and that power is unlocked by taking ownership for your entrepreneurial ventures, like ElementalSoul. This means taking ownership not just of product quality but of market perception, shipping logistics, marketing copy, and customer retention, even if a third-party vendor is the proximate cause of a failure. The application of EO creates the dichotomy of leadership, Willink and Babin. This is the synthesis of seemingly contradictory traits that the best leaders must possess. For example, decisive vs reticent. A leader must be able to make a swift, firm decision, decisive, but must also have the humility to listen to their team and pull back when warranted. Reticent, humble vs aggressive. The leader must be relentlessly aggressive in mission execution, but humble enough to own a mistake, admit when they are wrong, and learn from a junior team member. Close vs aloof. The leader must be close enough to the team to understand their pain, build trust, and maintain morale, but aloof enough to maintain strategic perspective, objectivity, and make the hard calls when necessary. The ultimate principle of Make Your Bed by McRaven. Small disciplines lead to bigger wins. This dichotomy is resolved by extreme ownership. When the humble leader owns the failure, the aggressive side is free to pursue the solution without being constrained by ego. Furthermore, radical accountability directly fuels decentralized command. In the SEAL environment, small teams operate under extreme pressure and often out of direct communication with higher command. They must execute on the fly. The leader must convey the commander's intent, the ultimate why and what of the mission, and then empower the junior leaders, fire team, and squad leaders to make tactical decisions based on the situation on the ground. This requires the junior leader to possess extreme ownership. They must not wait for explicit permission to adapt to a changing battlefield. This is the way of the SEAL marked divine in action. If a junior leader sees a better way to achieve the intent, they execute it and take full ownership of the result. This trust is built on a culture of EO, where mistakes are analyzed for lessons, not for blame. Finally, the principle manifests in an unwavering commitment to standards of performance. The collective narrative constantly reinforces that discipline equals freedom. JockoWillink. Accountability is the internal mechanism that enforces these high standards. It demands that the warrior operates with uncommon grit. Burnett in training and in life, ensuring that they are always battle-ready. Donald and McTavish. This radical level of accountability to the mission, to the team, and most importantly, to oneself is what differentiates the elite warrior from the conventional soldier and the successful entrepreneur from the one who is constantly seeking external validation or blaming outside forces. It is the spiritual backbone that enables the mental fortitude discussed in the first principle. The dichotomy of leadership and decentralized command, cultivating adaptive, autonomous excellence. The third core principle is the strategic implementation of leadership, combining the seemingly contradictory forces of the dichotomy of leadership with the operational necessity of decentralized command. This principle is the organizational expression of the individual's extreme ownership and mental fortitude, translating personal excellence into mission success for the team. It moves beyond individual toughness to the architecture of an elite team. The fundamental truth here is that rigid, top-down command structures fail under the stress and uncertainty of a dynamic environment, particularly combat. The operating environment of a SEAL team is characterized by what is often called VUCA volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. To thrive in this environment, the organization must be as flexible and adaptive as its operators are resilient. The dichotomy of leadership is the mechanism by which the leader maintains this balance. As established in the extreme ownership section, this involves the delicate, continuous management of opposing forces, care for the people vs focus on the mission. The leader must have genuine care for the well-being, training, and morale of the team. Brothers forever captures this deep bond. However, when the moment of truth arrives, the mission objective must take precedence, requiring the leader to make hard, sometimes sacrificial decisions. They must be the source of unbreakable resolve. Tom Shea. The dichotomy is reconciled by recognizing that the ultimate care for the team is putting them in a position to win the mission and survive, which often requires them to be pushed to their limits in preparation. Confidence vs humility. The team must project confidence to inspire trust and demonstrate unwavering belief in the plan and their capability. No hero ease evolution. Yet, the leader must maintain the humility to admit error, solicit feedback from the most junior member, and never assume they know everything. This prevents the leader's ego from creating mission-critical blind spots, the kind of ego that can lead to tragic missteps. Alpha and Code Over Country explore the dangers of ego and corruption within the ranks. Fast vs patient. Decisions often require instantaneous action, but the leader must have the patience to plan, train, and develop contingencies. They must resist the urge to jump the chain of command, instead using the taking point Brent Gleason principle of clear, concise communication and empowerment. The operational extension of this balanced leadership is decentralized command. This concept is the antidote to the VUCA environment, because a senior leader cannot possibly have perfect visibility of every micro-event on the ground. The power to make key tactical decisions must be pushed down the chain of command to the most junior personnel who have the best situational awareness. Decentralized command relies on three critical elements. Commander's intent. The leader must clearly communicate the overarching purpose, the why, and the end state, the what of the mission, rather than a rigid step-by-step how. This allows the team to pivot and adapt while staying aligned with the ultimate goal. Clear lines of communication. Information must flow efficiently up and down the chain. Junior leaders must have the confidence to pass up bad news, and the senior leaders must have the mechanisms to listen and adjust the overall strategy. Well-trained, trustworthy junior leaders. This is the most important element. Decentralization only works if every individual down to the newest team member is trained to a high standard, has mastering fear Brandon Webb as a baseline, and has been instilled with the principles of extreme ownership. They must be empowered to make decisions and trusted to take ownership of them. The purpose of BUD or S and subsequent training is to forge these warrior elite Dick Couch individuals. The synthesis of the dichotomy of leadership and decentralized command creates an adaptive, self-correcting team organism. The leader is the gravitational center, providing clarity of intent and maintaining the cultural standard of excellence, but the execution is distributed. This structure allows the team to be both disciplined, adhering to the overarching intent and high standards, and free, autonomously adapting to obstacles. It is the only way to successfully execute complex, high-risk missions like the one that killed Osama bin Laden. No easy day. The operator, where unforeseen variables are guaranteed. This principle is directly applicable to the entrepreneurial team. Empower employees with the mission's intent, hold them to high standards, and trust them to execute their part autonomously. Structured discipline and the pursuit of the unbeatable mind, the system for perpetual readiness. The final, unifying first principle underlying this entire body of literature is the absolute necessity of structured discipline and the pursuit of the unbeatable mind. This principle provides the methodology for achieving the mental fortitude principle 1 and sustaining the accountability principle 2 and organizational effectiveness principle 3. It asserts that discipline is not a constraint, but a pathway to freedom and perpetual readiness. Discipline as freedom. Jocko Willink's Discipline Equals Freedom is the most direct articulation of this truth. The paradox is that the more rigorous and non-negotiable one's self-discipline, the more control and freedom one gains in life. Discipline is the routine, the structure, and the practice that eliminates indecision, reaction, and chaos. By imposing structure on the mundane, waking up early, working out, planning, preparing one's gear, making one's bed, the mind is freed from having to make energy-sapping micro-decisions. This conserved cognitive and physical energy is then available to be deployed instantly and effectively when the true stress, the mission, the crisis, the entrepreneurial pivot arrives. The SEAL mindset lives in a state of perpetual readiness. The power of small disciplines. William H. McRaven's Make Your Bed elevates a micro-discipline to a macro principle. Starting the day with a simple, achievable task, a perfectly made bed provides a small initial win. This win instills a sense of pride and encourages the execution of the next task, creating a positive momentum loop. If the day is a catastrophic failure, one small structured task has still been completed, providing a small measure of comfort and a reminder that structure and order can be reimposed. The sum of small, non-negotiable disciplines, the workout. The planning session, the early start, creates the unshakable foundation of the warrior soul. Chuck Farrer, Systematic Mental Conditioning. The pursuit of the unbeatable mind. Mark Divine. Requires a system that integrates physical, mental, and spiritual practices. It goes beyond simply enduring pain to deliberately conditioning the mind to perform optimally under stress. This system includes visualization and mental rehearsal. SEALs are taught to mentally walk through the entire mission, anticipating all possible contingencies and visualizing successful resolution. This is not mere daydreaming. It's a cognitive process that trains the nervous system to react to a crisis as if it has already been resolved successfully. Controlled breathing, tactical breathing. Techniques are used to manipulate the nervous system, shifting the body from the sympathetic fight or flight to the parasympathetic rest and digest state while under immense duress. This is a physiological application of mental fortitude, using the mind to physically control the body's reaction to stress. Mindfulness and awareness. The ability to be fully present, taking in all available data without being paralyzed by it. This is a core part of Masters of Uncertainty. Rich Diviny, the ability to observe reality without being emotionally hijacked by fear, the survival mindset. This principle is the bedrock of texts like SEAL Survival Guide and the U.S. Navy SEAL Survival Handbook. Survival is not just about knowing how to build a fire. It is fundamentally about maintaining a structured, disciplined mental state in the face of despair and chaos. The survival mindset is the refusal to accept defeat, an ability to assess resources calmly, prioritize needs, shelter, water, fire, food, and execute a disciplined plan of action, even when the odds are stacked against you. The structured discipline of training, the repetition of drills, the mastery of gear. The muscle memory is what automatically takes over when the conscious mind is overwhelmed. In essence, this final principle binds the entire philosophy together. The self-discipline to constantly train and execute the small things is what forges the mental strength to endure the large suffering. Principle 1. This readiness ensures the leader is always prepared to take extreme ownership. Principle 2. And finally, this structured excellence across the team is what allows for the smooth, adaptive function of decentralized command. Principle 3. The ultimate goal is a state of total preparedness, where the internal systems of the individual and the team are so robust that they can not only survive but win the war within. Never finished.